Now, I don't know about you, but when I go on holiday, I want to make the most of where I go and what I see. And I want to do that by taking some great photos. And today I'm going to show you how you can simply take amazing photographs just walking around with your family with one camera and maybe a lens or two. So let's have a look. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Richard here. And it is great to be back. I'm doing a bit of a talking head video here when I'm going to show you some photos that I've taken on holiday, but I'm going to go through some composition techniques that anyone can apply when they're on holiday. You don't have to go out with cameras, lenses, tripods, filters, all that kind of thing. Yes, you're going to be restricted somehow to some degree, but you are still going to take some great photos. So I'm going to go through a few subjects. There are going to be things like lighting, leading lines, foreground, scale, emphasizing scale in your photos, all things like that that you can easily do when you are out on a normal holiday, day trip, weekend away, whatever. Let's have a look at some photos and I will go through why I like them and what I considered when I was taking those photos. And the first thing we're going to look at is just one photo and lighting, and I'll explain why. So here is a photo that I took in the Rocky Mountain National Park. Now, lighting is always at its best, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. You don't want to be worrying about that when you're on holiday. You don't want to be getting up at 5 o'clock to catch sunrise or staying up till 9 o'clock to catch the sunset when your family's having fun or having a lie-in or stuff like that. But late afternoon, out in the mountains, you can still get some great light. This photo here was taken at I think about 4 o'clock, and I don't get mountains where I am in the New Forest, so seeing tops of mountains like this with the sunlight hitting it from one side, the sun was getting lower in the sky at that time of day, 4 o'clock. I've accentuated the brightness and the shadows obviously, but you still can find light if you just look for shadows and contrast and things like that. It doesn't have to write your photo off totally if you're not up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You are restricted, there is only one photo, but it's just a demonstration of how you can make the most of the light that you will have. Just look for that contrast, look for the light hitting the side of a building and causing harsh shadows, look for that light hitting the side of a mountain or reflections, anything like that that you can make the most of. Just take a few seconds to look around and see where you are. That's the one photo I'm going to show you on light, because everything else I'm going to go through you can do without worrying about being up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So the next subject is leading lines. Now this is a photo, may have even been taken from the car or just at the side of the road. It is demonstrating leading lines here. You've got the driveway coming up from the bottom left here, the edge of the grass. You've also got the power line coming down from the top left-hand corner, leading up to this old-fashioned tower. It's been edited to sort of show like it's a little bit old school, and I just love that kind of not outback, but that kind of sort of areas in America where you're driving around and you just see these old buildings and these old water towers or whatever that is. I don't even know what that is, but I just love the look at it, and I love those leading lines that draws the viewer into it and it takes you to that subject straight away. Another example is the road at the bottom of this photo here. You can see the road coming around the corner there. It's a classic leading line going around the bend, but you've also got this massive giant cliff on the left hand side. This one was taken in the car as well, but I just love the contrast in that single road leading the viewer to that massive mountain and the side of the cliff. Again, I think this is the Rockies, but I'm really not sure. And the next photo, this is on the way to Mount Rushmore, typical leading line there, coming in from the right, snaking away to the distance, leading the viewer around the bend, sort of taking you on your road trip with them, wondering what's around the corner, what's next, what's coming up. Just that sense of the open road I love. And this is another one in Rocky Mountain National Park. This is Trail Ridge Road, and we're just at one of the highest points in the that you can walk to easily without hiking up mountains and stuff like that. It was a man-made path to a very high point, and you turn around and this is the view that we had looking off into the distance. And it's just, again, looking for that leading line, bottom left, and it just takes the viewer all the way through the picture with you. And it's just, these are the things that I love looking for in photographs when we're traveling. This one is less obvious. Now, anyone that loves outdoor photography and nature photography and things like that will have heard of Ansel Adams. He was sort of a pioneer black and white California National Park sort of photographer back in the 30s and 40s. I'm not quite sure, right up to the 70s I believe, but I'm not sure about sort of when he started and stopped. This particular photo I think was taken in the early 1930s, 32 possibly. This is my photo. I went to the same place. This is Snake River. When Ansel Adams took a photo, there was more of the river in view. Google Ansel Adams Snake River and you'll see this photo, or one like this. But you could see more of the river. He had much more of a leading line, but there is still a subtle leading line. The way that it goes, the river sort of runs up, you can see it's about to bend off to the left here. There's this diagonal line of the bank in the background, and that ultimately gets you to that lovely mountain that's towering over this scenery in Grand Teton, I think we're in now. On our way to Grand Teton anyway. So yeah, leading lines don't have to be as obvious as a road going through the frame. It can be something a little bit more subtle, like the one you have here. Now the next one I'm going to talk about is framing. Framing is when you've got a subject, and it's very much like leading lines where you can frame your photo with something, whether it be an arch, trees, a window. I'll show you a window in a second, but this one, for example, here, the waterfall, Tower Falls in Yosemite. Really like the falls dropping down behind these trees. The trees had some nice colours that I thought I could promote in editing afterwards, and I think that the U shape of these trees here sort of really pulls you into the waterfall, which is obviously the main subject of this photograph. The next one, again, a waterfall, Hidden Falls near Jenny Lake in Teton National Park. You have the two banks of trees on the left and the right, creating a nice frame around the waterfall. And if you look closely, you've also got a few pictures taken, the Instagram photos at the bottom on the rocks there, which all kind of draws you into that photo and takes you off up the waterfall. And it's just, to me, very pleasing to see the framing and the subject there. This one is less obvious. You've got the nice reflections out into the distance, but you've also got the trees down either side, and they're not. Sometimes you get the odd tree sticking in it. It looks like you've missed it, or you've messed up your composition, or you've ignored, you've not noticed it. But this, I did it so that it was obvious that it wasn't something that I missed. It was intentional, giving me a frame around the main subject in the distance, which is the reflections and the bank of trees on the far ground, and obviously the mountains in the distance as well. So this one here, it doesn't get any more framing than that. It's shooting through a window frame at Jackson Lodge in, again, Teton National Park, looking at the Teton Range in the distance there, but it's using a window frame as a frame. So it doesn't have to be trees, doesn't have to be something out in nature, it could be something inside. And the last one, real quick, I'm going to do on the framing is this one here at Mount Rushmore. There was an arch as we walked through the walkway to go and see the 4 ex-presidents carved into the side of the rock there, and I've used that as a frame, and it kind of does frame the subject, and it's obvious what I'm trying to shoot, but it just gives it a nice little compositional balance that means that it's not just a normal photo, it's something a little bit different. The next one is foreground. This is going to be a little bit tougher because you need 2 things to align for you. You need something in the foreground and you need a main subject in the background. And here's an example with, as you can see, a slight bit of framing down the left and right. So we've got framing, we've got the main subject in the distance, but we've also got something in the foreground which gives the photo depth. The viewer sees that, they travel up from the bottom of the picture and they see what ultimately is the view that you want them to see, but it gives that depth to the photo that means it's not just one dimension, it gives it more of a dimension, a second dimension, meaning it's more pleasing, I think, to look at like that. Here is another one. Full disclosure, I've done another video about this, but I did remove something from this picture because I really wanted to emphasize this area in the middle here where the bush sort of pokes up through the 2 rocks, and then you've got the reflection of the mountain poking into that gap that it's left, and the main focus is obviously the mountains in the distance with the tree line and the reflections, but it's got the foreground interest which adds that depth again to the photo. And I think this is the last main one on foreground. The reeds here in the water, the reflection from the sun really makes them pop, and you've got again the reflections and the trees and the mountains in the distance, and it just gives that second dimension rather than it just being a plain old river reflection or lake reflection or whatever this was. Now the next one, it does have sort of a foreground, but we are now moving on to scale. If you can then go take a photo of something, if you see a tree or an animal or a car or whatever you're taking a photo of, don't just zoom in on that thing. Zoom out, show where that animal is, show where that tree is, give it a bit more of a, show its environment, where you are and what it's in, and you really can emphasize the scale. So this is kind of a foreground interest for me, and it shows the scale of grand prismatic spring. I love and leading lines, I guess. It's got everything. I love the way the lines in the sand move off into the distance. You can see the textures at the front of the picture here. You've got the reflections as it moves up to the water, and you've got the beautiful blue sky as well. And it's just a nice contrast. The colours are vibrant. It's got a bit of foreground. It's got leading lines. It's got texture. It's one of my favourite photos from the whole holiday. And the thing I like even more about it is it's simple. It's not complicated. There are lots of different elements, but they don't jump out at you. They're all there, but they're subtle. And I think that, for me anyway, I love it. This next one, this is near Mormon Row, and you can see that car driving out of the entrance to where the barns were situated that we were visiting. And again, I don't want to take a photo of a standard SUV, but you put it in that environment, you put it in a wide open space, you put it in the plains of Teton National Park, and all of a sudden it's a photograph. You can see the small car, you can see the tree, which is obviously much bigger than it, but then in the background you've got those mountain range, which just really does pull out the size and the scale, and that's what makes the image. Picture of the car is going to be nothing. Picture of the mountains, while nice, is made better, I think, by having that car in it, by having those trees in it, and you just get to understand the area that we're in when that photo was taken. Again, I took some photos of buffaloes zoomed in, got their eyeballs, got their fur, you could see the detail in the animal, but this is one that I took where I wanted to show the background, I wanted to show where it was in its environment, and you can see that it's a wild animal. You can see it's out in the wild, it's out in the national parks, wandering around, that's its home, and it just adds something to the photo rather than it just being a tight crop on an animal. Not just animals, trees. This was a lone tree in Lamar Valley. The things I like about this, it was getting close to sunset. What time is it? 5 to 8 here. And you can see that there's mist or haze in the background. You can see the layers of the trees and then the mountains behind it. And the tree just sort of stands off of that background because it is hazy, because there is separation. And, while it is just a photo of the tree, put it in that environment, show where it is, show the mountains, show the sky. You can just get a sense of where you are and what the area is like. And this is a real cool, this isn't a pano, this is one shot that I've just cropped into a 6x17 format. I just love the sunset, I love the river, and I love showing all those trees in the Lamar Valley. Yeah, just wanted to include that one. Right. The next one is Symmetry. Now, everyone's heard of rule of thirds, where you divide your picture into 3 that way and 3 this way, and you put your subject where the lines cross, which is great. That's the common thing to do with composition, the rule of thirds. It's a common photography term, but when you're looking at reflections, when you're looking at symmetry, you can really ignore that rule, and the symmetry in the reflections gives you something to think about in the picture rather than the composition of where your subject is. There is no real subject in this next photo. It is just what I think is a nice reflection, nice colours, calm, peaceful, and it's just something that I enjoy taking. I've taken lots of them when I've been out in the forest. I've taken lots of reflection photos, the symmetry. You'll see my horizon go straight through the middle of the screen, which is not a common thing to do, but it's what I like doing, and I still think it makes for a good photo. These are older photos. These photos are 7 or 8 years old now, taken in Canada. This is Bow Lake. Again, you've got the reflection of the whatever mountain this is. I'm sorry, I know it's Bow Lake, but I don't know what the mountain range is called. It's in the Rockies anyway, going up the Icefields Parkway. And this is, what's it called? Harrison Lake? Not sure. I'll put it down here. Again, reflection, symmetry, cut a line through the middle of it, and it's the same at the top as it is at the bottom. Doesn't have to be rule of thirds, just look for those reflections. And I think I might have one more. No, I don't. If you're going over a bridge, look, get lined up at that footbridge, and you can make some great photos and the symmetry is the photo. You know, it's pleasing on the eye when you see things like that. So they're the main things I wanted to go through. You've got your lighting, leading lines, foreground, scale or isolate your subject, and symmetry. One or two other things I want to quickly mention, and that is where you stand and what the focal length of your camera or your lens is. If you've got even if it's just a traditional zoom, 24 to 300, you know, a cheap, not a pro zoom, but something that gives you that long range. I'm hiring one at Christmas and I'm going to see how I get on with it. It's not an expensive lens in terms of, it's not an L lens, it's not an expensive pro lens, but it will give me one lens, 24 at the widest, and I think 300, or no, 240, 24 to 240 I think. And I want to see how I get on with it. I want to see what the quality is like. Is it something I could use for travel? With that in mind, this is a photo of the Molten Barn taken in Teton Valley. Not a particularly good photo. Look at the mountain range in the background, you can barely see it. This was taken at 24mm. Walk back, use 70mm. I swapped lenses, I put a 70mm lens on, I walked back, and this is the same photo, the same barn in the same place. What a difference. Look at that mountain range towering over it, and this was taken at 70mm. But just walking back 20 yards, zooming into 70, compositionally they're very, very similar. You know, the barn's the same size in both of them, but look at the difference in the mountains. So just think about lens compression, it's called. Zooming in, it compresses your picture, it brings the foreground closer to the background, and rather than it being just a boring old barn with loads of sky, you can still keep the sky, but it just brings that background forward, and it's a million times better in my eye anyway. And the final one that I really enjoyed taking, I took a couple of them, is the mist and the haze in the mountains and the layers that you get. This was taken at Bear Lake in the car park actually, just as we got out of the car. On this one I focused on the sort of mountain range themselves. You can see the two layers here, you can see the mist, the sun's just coming up, and you've got the nice silhouette of the trees in front. That was taken at 6:11 in the morning. This one was taken a couple of hours later on our hike up. So the sun is fully up now, 8:30, 8:35. But this time I focused on the trees, getting that nice diagonal line going from bottom left to middle right. But look at the layers. There's trees here, there's the first layer of trees, and it goes into mountains, and they're getting softer and softer as the picture draws away from you. And I just love those lines, I love those layers, I love how soft the background is. And they're not photos that I've taken that often, but it's something I'm going to look for more. It even goes off into the distance even further if you look right back into the depth of the photo. So lots to look at in this photo, even though again it's really simple, it's really basic, and it's not complicated at all. So that is my quick take on what you can look for if you're on a holiday and you're taking quick snapshots. None of these were set up, none of these I went out to take them. They're just, oh, there's a nice photo, what can I do to make that photo nicer? Is there a leading line? Is there a foreground interest? Is there a frame? Can I zoom in and isolate part of the, this was taken at, where are we? 105mm this was taken at, so I had the 24 to 105 on, and I've zoomed in as far as I could with that to isolate what I wanted to isolate, to get that composition. So have a look around, take 10 seconds to think, I want to take a photo of that mountain. Is there something down here I can include in it? Can I stand back and get a frame? Can I zoom in and get something like this? Rather than just a quick snapshot and moving on, just take some consideration around what you've got around you and try to bring in other subjects, other aspects of your surroundings to add something to the photo. But don't overcomplicate it. Two or three elements in the photo is perfect. If you start including too much, then you will lose what you're trying to take a photograph of, if that makes sense. You'll lose the focal point of your image. Have a frame, have a foreground interest, but keep it simple. And hopefully you will be able to get some great photos just walking around with your family on your next holiday. Thank you for watching. I've been chatting away for ages, and I will see you in the next video.